What is the Assure model?
Here's what it stands for.
A equals analyzing learners. S equals standards and objectives. S equals selects strategies and resources.
U equals utilize resources.
R equals require learner participation. E equals evaluate and revise. The first step in planning a lesson is to identify and analyze learner characteristics shown to be associated with learning outcomes. This information will guide your decision-making during the design of your lesson. The key areas to consider during learner analysis include 1. General characteristics of learners, 2. Specific entry competencies, knowledge, skills, and attitudes about the topic, and 3. Learning differences and needs. When starting a lesson, it is important to acquire prior information from student knowledge. Research reveals that students' prior knowledge of a particular subject influences how and what they learn more than does any psychological trait. Teachers can do this formally or informally. Entry tests are assessments that determine whether students possess the necessary prerequisites, or competencies, to benefit from instruction. For example, if you are going to teach students to calculate the area of geometric shapes, the entry test should focus on multiplication skills to identify students who need remediation prior to the lesson. To ensure learning for all students, teachers must identify and analyze the unique differences and needs of individual learners. Research has shown that students have multiple intelligences, perceptual preferences and strengths, various information processing behaviors, a range of motivations, and differing physiological factors that influence learning. For example, Howard Gardner's foundational multiple intelligences research suggests a person can have varying abilities in 8 areas: 1. Verbal linguistic 2. Logical mathematical 3. Visual, spatial 4. Body kinesthetic 5. Musical 6. Naturalistic 7. Interpersonal, intrapersonal 8. Existentialist. Next, we have standards and objectives. Begin with curriculum and technology standards adopted by your district, as these are based on state and national student performance criteria. Well-stated objectives name the learners for whom the objective is intended, the action behavior to be demonstrated, the conditions under which the behavior or performance will be observed, and the degree to which the new knowledge or skill must be mastered. For this text, the condition will include the use of technology and media to support learning and to assess achievement of the standard or learning objectives. It is important to state the standards and learning objectives for each lesson because they serve as the basis for the following 3 critical components of the Assure lesson plan: 1. Strategies, technology, and media selection, 2. Assessment, and 3. Student learning expectations. Basis for strategies, technology, and media selection. When you have clear statements of what students will know and should be able to do at the conclusion of the lesson, as stated in standards and objectives, you are better able to carefully select the strategies, technology, and media that will ensure learning. For basis for assessment. Stating standards and learning objectives also helps ensure accurate assessment of student learning. The explicitly stated student outcomes serve as a guide when creating assessments to measure the targeted knowledge and skills that are directly aligned with standardized tests. Basis for student learning expectations. Your students are better able to prepare for and participate in learning activities when they know the expected outcomes. The learning objectives may be viewed as a type of contract between teacher and learner. The teacher's responsibility is to provide learning activities suitable to aid you to attain the objective. The learner's responsibility is to participate conscientiously in those learning activities. Next we have the ABCDs of well-stated learning objectives. Because the learning objectives focus on what learners will know and be able to do after the lesson, it is important to clearly identify the targeted learners, for example, Sec-OND grade students. For students you will be teaching all year, you may choose the Common Audience Identifier, the learner will, which is often abbreviated as TLW. For students who have individual education plans, the objectives will be targeted to students by name. For behavior, the heart of the objective is the verb describing the new capability that learners will have after instruction. This verb is stated as an observable behavior, such as define, categorize, or demonstrate. Vague terms such as know, understand, and appreciate do not communicate observable performance. Visual examples like the helpful 100 list offers verbs that highlight the behavior or performance. Strive to solicit student behavior or performance that reflects deep understanding and real-world capability. In other words, rather than having students select the correct answers on a test about water conservation, have them compare and contrast two water conservation systems to identify which is most eco-friendly. Or rather than selecting names of geometric shapes on a worksheet, have students identify shapes used in the Golden Gate Bridge. Learning objectives should include the conditions under which the performance is to be assessed. In other words, what materials or tools will be allowed or not allowed for student use in demonstrating mastery of the objective. Thus, an objective might state, given a list of earthquake occurrences over the past 100 years, the student will generate a line graph to demonstrate trends over time. A language arts objective might say, without using reference materials, the student will write a 300-word essay on the relationship of nutrition to learning. When stating the degree or criterion for assessing student products that are more comprehensive in scope, a rubric rating scale that assesses several components of the product is appropriate. An average of the combined rubric scores can be used to provide an overall proficiency rating. For example, proficiency on a student product may be stated as follows. Students are to achieve an overall rubric rating of 3 on a 4-point scale, where 4 equals exceeds expectations. Teachers can use the ABCD objectives checklist to assess the degree to which your objectives communicate the intent of the learning. Many curriculum standards also lack the use of technology to assist students in achieving the learning objective. This concern can be addressed by adding the appropriate ISTE 2007 to lessons. Include technology in the condition component of the objective, as in the following examples, given spreadsheet software and data on population growth, natural resources, and global warming. 6th grade science students will use a spreadsheet to estimate the impact of population growth on natural resources from at least 3 perspectives. Given digital images and presentation software, first-grade students will construct a 4-slide presentation with one student-selected clip art image per slide to demonstrate 4 student moods: happy, sad, angry, and bored. Given access to word processing software and web-based resources on American wars, high school students will generate a word processed table that shows 25 similarities of and differences between World War I and World War II. Learning objectives are not intended to limit what students learn, but rather are intended to provide a minimum level of expected achievement. Incidental learning should be expected to occur and should be encouraged because learning takes different forms with different students. Class discussions and other kinds of student involvement in the instructional situation, therefore, should rarely be rigidly limited to a specific objective. Indeed, to foster incidental learning and provide for individual differences, it is sometimes advisable to have students specify some of their own learning objectives. Next we have strategies and resources. With all instructional strategies, whether teacher or student-centered, must engage students in active learning. When identifying instructional strategies for a lesson, first consider where teacher-centered approaches should be used and where student-centered strategies might be more appropriate. The teacher strategies involve your own teaching activities, as when you present a concept by showing a video or reading a story, or when you use the interactive whiteboard to engage students in exploring the photosynthesis process. The student-centered strategies are those in which the teacher acts as a facilitator. Examples of student-centered learning include small groups discussing the pros and cons of a topic, pairs of students conducting an internet search or taking digital photos of a process, or individuals listening to podcasts on a current news story. Most lessons include several teacher and student strategies. Researchers stated that today's teachers need to implement instructional strategies that engage students in activities that build both cognitive and cognitive skills. The cognitive skills prepare students to 1. Analyze and use information, 2. Address complex problems and issues, and 3. Create patterns and mental models in order to gain a deeper understanding and build new knowledge. When selecting resources for Assure lessons, decisions are made regarding the technology and media and the types of support materials needed to achieve the lesson outcomes. In addition to selecting support materials, teachers often need to modify existing materials or design new materials to meet specific lesson objectives. Guidelines and tools for making these decisions follow. It is important for teachers to consider when selecting appropriate technology and media for students that it can be a complex task. They must consider the vast array of available resources, the diversity of your learners, and the specific learning objectives to be pursued. Videos, for example, raise the issue of presentation pace, which varies for individual learners. In examining educational games, look for relevant practice and feedback. When selecting an audio storybook, look for functions such as embedded definitions and ease of returning to previously read sections. The selection rubrics provide a systematic procedure for assessing the qualities of specific technology and media. Each rubric includes a set of consistent selection criteria as well as criteria for the designated technology or media, e.g., application software, audio. You need to decide which criteria are most important for use in helping your students achieve the stated learning objectives. When developing the rubric, the teacher must consider the following: alignment with standards, outcomes, and objectives, accurate and current information, age-appropriate language interest level and engagement, technical quality, ease of use for student or teacher, bias-free user guide and directions. When you have selected your strategies and the type of technology and media needed for your lesson, you are ready to select the materials to support lesson implementation. This step involves 3 general options: 1. Selecting available materials, 2. Modifying existing materials, 3. Designing new materials. The majority of instructional materials used by teachers are off-the-shelf, that is, ready-made and available from school, district, or other easily accessible sources. Many of these resources are free or inexpensive. You may want to begin by meeting with your library media specialist and discussing your learning objectives, instructional strategies, and desired media formats. Because evaluation of materials is time-consuming and complex, it may be useful to involve other teachers, especially experienced teachers whose years of work with media and material alternatives have involved a lot of critical analysis about education resources. Working with other teachers allows a pool of shared ideas for using materials and a collective strength that may make it easier to acquire materials from museums or organizations. A variety of online reviews of educational resources are available to assist teachers with material selection. For example, Education World is a site that is updated on a daily basis and offers reviews of applications, websites, and technology products as well as lesson plans, classroom-ready resources, professional development articles, and social media tools to connect with other teachers. Many educational resources are provided as copyright-free digital files or as paper copies. Digital materials are typically found on educational websites that provide downloadable resources. Example resources include lesson handouts, teacher PowerPoint presentations, and Excel spreadsheets formatted for easy data entry. However, when materials are only available in PDF or paper format, modifications can be accomplished with digital scanning or creative use of a copy machine. For example, materials can be scanned and modified with editing software. Another approach is to modify a paper original and then make copies of the revised resource. A word of caution about using and modifying commercially produced materials is to be sure not to violate copyright laws and restrictions. If in doubt, check with your library media specialist, administrator, or legal advisor. General copyright guidelines are discussed earlier in the text. When ready-made materials are not available or existing materials cannot be easily modified, you need to design your own lesson materials, which can range from hand printing a flip chart to using your laptop to create handouts, presentations, or an online blog. The remaining chapters provide guidance for developing meaningful materials involving a variety of technology and media. Next we have utilize resources. In this step involves planning your teaching role for utilizing the resources, technology, media, and materials to help students achieve the learning objectives. To do this, follow the 5 peta-seconds process: preview the resources, prepare the resources, prepare the environment, prepare the learners, and provide the learning experience. At this stage, teachers need to preview the selected technology and media resources in relation to the learning objectives. The goal is to select the portions that directly align with your lesson. For example, if your lesson is on correct use of prepositions, preview several language arts software programs to find drill and practice activities that match your objectives. Even though your selection of materials may have already involved examining published reviews, distributors' blurbs, and colleagues' appraisals, it is critical for you to preview the materials yourself before using them. Not only will a thorough review enable you to use resources to their full potential, it will ensure that students are not exposed to inappropriate content or language found in some digital games, videos, and online or printed periodicals. Next, you need to prepare the resources that will support your instructional activities. The first step is to gather all the materials and equipment you will need. Determine the sequence for using the materials and equipment and what you will do with each one. For example, you may want to change how an instructional game is used by preparing a new set of questions at a different level of difficulty or even on a new topic. Or, if the audio portion of a video doesn't align with the needs of your students, you can turn off the sound and provide the narration yourself. Wherever the learning is to take place, in the classroom, in a laboratory, at the media center, the facilities will have to be arranged for effective use of the resources. Some media require a darkened room, a convenient power source, and access to light switches. You should check that the equipment is in working order. Arrange the facilities so that all students can see and hear properly. Foundational research on learning tells us that what is learned from an activity depends highly on how learners are prepared for the lesson audience properly warmed up. Effective instruction also requires a proper warm-up, which can include one or more of the following: 1. An introduction giving a broad overview of the lesson content. 2. A rationale telling how the content relates to real-world applications. 3. A motivating statement that creates a need to know the content. 4. Cues directing attention to specific aspects of the lesson. A teacher-centered learning experience often involves a presentation, demonstration, drill and practice, or a tutorial. The provision of these learning experiences may require the use of various resources. Next we have require learner participation. For teachers to be effective, instruction should require learners' active mental engagement. Provide activities that allow them to practice the new knowledge or skills and to receive feedback on their efforts before being formally assessed. Practice may involve student self-checks, digital tutorials, internet activities, or group exercises. Feedback can come from the teacher, digital devices, other students, or self-evaluation. The objectives for your lesson explicitly state what students are expected to know and do after instruction. Thus, it is critical to require learner participation through explicit practice with the new knowledge and skills. One common way of requiring learner participation is through the student use of technology to express their creativity and innovative ideas. For example, young children can gain deeper understanding of new vocabulary words, when using software such as Kidpix to locate images representing new words and adding personal definitions in their own words. Another example involves middle school students creating PowerPoint presentations depicting trends in American folk music over the past 100 years. The activity requires summarizing key ideas from historical documents, choosing the best photos and sound clips, and sequencing content in a meaningful way. A key to preparing students for future careers is to engage them in collaborative activities in which they must communicate through various methods. For example, when using projected still pictures of students living in Alaska, you can engage students in a lively discussion in which they compare themselves with the students in the photos. The Internet provides students with instant access to limitless resources. However, students need information literacy skills in order to identify, evaluate, and use information to make informed decisions, apply knowledge to new situations, and create new knowledge. As a teacher, it is critical for you to plan activities that actively engage students in processing information and reporting results that are meaningful for the assigned task. Today's curriculum and technology standards require students to demonstrate application of critical thinking through activities such as planning and completing a successful project, solving problems, and drawing conclusions. It is important for students of all ages to regularly examine information through the use of tools such as electronic devices, e.g., science probes and microscopes, digital audio and video equipment, e.g., cameras and whiteboards, and a variety of applications, e.g., spreadsheets and databases. Technological tools specifically designed to engage students in problem solving include digital games and simulations. Games use competition, intrigue, and inquisitiveness as vehicles for students to gain content knowledge. Kahoot is a great example for students to be competitive against each other, while teachers can assess their content knowledge. Educational software provides excellent resources for engaging students with diverse abilities in individualized learning activities focused toward core content knowledge and skills. The programs allow students of lower than average abilities to move at their own pace, completing practice activities while receiving immediate feedback and remediation. Other media practices involves teacher developing discussions, short quizzes, and application exercises that can provide opportunities for practice and feedback during instruction. Teacher guides and manuals suggests techniques and activities for reinforcing student responses. In all cases, learners should receive feedback on their work. The feedback may come from the teacher, or students may work in small groups and give one another feedback. Feedback may also be part of a self-check activity done independently or with a mentor, often using technology. Researchers stated that describes various components of feedback for teachers to consider, such as when it is given, criteria used, clarity of feedback to students, and tone. Is the feedback positive and will it encourage students to improve? Evaluate and revise. The final component of the Assure model, evaluate and revise, is essential to the development of quality instruction, yet this component of lesson design is often neglected. Without this step, it is often impossible to know whether instruction is successful or how to revise unsuccessful strategies. When evaluating the impact on student learning, we as teachers have to ask, can they demonstrate that capabilities that is specified in their standards and objectives? After formulated the learning objectives, that includes a criterion of acceptable performance. Next, teachers must develop assessment tasks that require students to demonstrate the behavior stated in the objective. Other objectives may call for process-type behaviors, e.g., outlining a story, solving quadratic equations, or classifying animals, the creation of products, e.g., a sculpture, a written composition, a Prezi presentation, or a portfolio, or an exhibit of attitudes, e.g., choosing to read during free time activities, placing used paper in the recycle bin, or eating healthy snacks. After the assessment of the instructional strategies and the resources to supports the lesson, the next step involves room for improvement. Were the instructional strategies effective? Did the technology and media resources assist students in meeting the objectives? Were they effective in getting student interest? Did they support student participation? The important factor in evaluation and revision is learner input. Teachers can acquire learner input of the effectiveness of specific media such as video, an activity, or an entire lesson. Student surveys can also be used to collect learner comments. Teachers can also obtain student feedback regarding your instructional strategies and use of technology and media through discussions and interviews. For example, you may learn that students would have preferred independent study to your choice of group presentation. Your students also may let you know, subtly or not so subtly, that your own performance left something to be desired. Although evaluation of your teaching may evoke some apprehension, the resulting information will provide excellent feedback for addressing areas of needed improvement on for celebrating areas of high-quality teaching. There are 4 basic types of teacher evaluation: self, student, peer, and administrator. 1. For self-evaluation, you can create an audio or video recording of your instruction that you then listen to or view at a later time while using an evaluation form. 2. Students, even in early grades, can provide valuable feedback through age-appropriate surveys. Students may be reluctant to evaluate their teacher in open class discussions, but might share ideas in a group or submit comments anonymously. 3. You may ask a colleague, or peer, usually another teacher, to sit in the back of the room and observe your teaching skills. Feedback could be given in an open-ended evaluation, blank sheet of paper, or you may design a form that addresses areas for which you would like to receive feedback. 4. In most schools, administrators visit teachers on a scheduled sequence, often annually, semi-annually, or more frequently due to increased teacher accountability. You may ask an administrator to visit more frequently on an unofficial basis. Many schools have a standard form that administrators use to observe teachers and provide feedback to them. You may also inform your administrator of other characteristics you would like her to observe. The final step of the instructional cycle is to sit back and look at your assessment and evaluation data. Examine discrepancies between your intentions and what actually happened. Did student achievement fall short on one or more of the learning objectives? How did students react to the instructional strategies and lesson resources? Are you, the teacher, satisfied with the technology tools you selected? Let's recap the Assure model. A equals analyzing learners, S equals state standards and objectives, S equals select strategies and resources, U equals utilize resources, R equals require learner participation, E equals evaluate and revise. We hope you enjoyed the presentation of Chapter 3.